and I unwittingly caused some real problems for partners of mine who I put into really tough situations, and they should not have been in. So now that's like the basis of all the work that I do, because I don't want to be responsible for creating those problems anymore. And better, I want to be helpful to people in avoiding them.
As an investor, when you're evaluating a would-be entrepreneur, what were those things that you started to learn? Like, this is a red flag, or you, Mr. or Mrs. Entrepreneur, are going to have trouble with X, Y, and Z.
I started calling some of the best minds in ETA. I'm like, how do you evaluate these people?
Mm.
And the answer was effectively portfolio theory. So if you approach the world from that perspective, you can't really accept this more transactional way of thinking like, well, I'm going to make 10 bets and six of them, maybe five of them aren't really going to work, but that's okay. Because in my world, those are five people I've made commitments to.
Shannon Jones, thanks for being on. So well, first, how are you?
I'm great. It's funny. I was trying to think about like when's the last time we talked, and I don't even know. It's been so long. And I've been following you in your journey and ownership and kind of digital, like you're wrestling with the evolving digital landscape over LinkedIn. So I'm probably more excited to talk to you than you are to talk to me, because we have, like we used to talk about the thing you'd want to buy, and now you've done it. Which is awesome. So things are good with me. I'm still involved in a number of different ways in helping people acquire and helping people grow businesses, sometimes as an investor, sometimes as a board member, sometimes as a kind of a talent and organizational design focused consulting guy. I wear a lot of different hats, all of them somewhat related, and all of them make me a weird PE guy. But I've like leaned into being a weird PE guy, so
That's
things
awesome.
are
Yeah,
good.
we'll title the podcast "Weird PE Guy Gives a Playbook."
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That's really good. Well, one thing is, so yeah, it must have been over 4 years ago, but when I was looking, and I think this is good background because I think it just sums up what a great human being you are, Shannon, is like when I was looking to buy a company and I was thinking about a lot of things, and I approached you through a mutual friend who I'm not allowed to say his name, which is really irritating because he's a good guy. But but like I approached you and like immediately you dug into, well, Nick, what makes you tick? And let's talk about your strengths. And, we're a lot of like, in the what entrepreneurship through acquisition community, ETA, they're all about like, what's the investment thesis? What is your value add to this? Like, what are you doing? But like you're like, you put me through a predictive index psychological exam. You walked me through maybe where I had blind spots. You took so much time with me. And even though we didn't end up working together, like I was just always so grateful. And your door was always open to help me through like a roadblock I was going through. So just your identification of helping entrepreneurs be the best versions of themselves. And there's so much psychology behind that. And I don't know, what would you call it? Overcoming, just being resilient is so important. But you walking through that was always helpful to me. So I was very anxious to get you on the podcast, start talking about some of this.
Well, thank you for saying that. I'm glad it was helpful. And a lot of what you and I talked about was just the result of me trying to solve my own ignorance at some level, because I approached, that method you described, or that perspective you described. This is a transaction. What's the investment thesis? What's the investor's rate of return? Does it beat certain thresholds? Blah blah blah. What's the industry growth rate? What's the company growth rate? What's the all that stuff? It's not that that's unimportant, but it's what I would describe as necessary but not sufficient. And what I realized through making what I thought were some good decisions, that ultimately I bear responsibility for resulting in putting people in positions where they were unlikely to be successful and not even knowing I was doing it,
Mm,
uh, helped me see like, okay, this stuff it's all very useful and it's necessary, but there's a whole nother game to be played here. And you can think about it as leadership. You can think about, you can think about it as partnership. But really, what I thought about is, okay, as a leader or as a partner, a potential partner to you, it's my job to help you figure out what are the conditions necessary for you to be successful. And my job as your investor, if I become that, is to help you recognize the good, the bad, the benefit, the drawback of how you show up, and to marry that to the right circumstance so that when you're in that circumstance as the leader, I can't eliminate all the craziness, but I can eliminate a lot of it
Yeah.
just by starting with you.
Mm.
But I didn't know to do that until I didn't do it. And I unwittingly caused some real problems for partners of mine who I put into really tough situations. And they should not have been in. So now that's like the basis of all the work that I do, because I don't want to be responsible for creating those problems anymore. And better, I want to be helpful to people in avoiding them.
Let's I would love to, like, stop and marinate on that point. As an investor, when you're evaluating a would-be entrepreneur, because the belief for I mean, what is the, analogy investors always give? We look at the horse, the jockey, and the track, right? The horse is the entrepreneur, the no, no, the jockey is the entrepreneur, the horse is the company, and the track is the TAM, or the total addressable
Yep.
market, and the business
Yep.
thesis.
Yep.
And there is so much emphasis on, like, is this a good jockey? Because I think a good jockey overcomes a lot of other flaws in the business. So when you're looking at them now, and you said, I put some of these entrepreneurs in awkward positions. What were those things that you started to learn? Like, this is a red flag, or you, Mr. or Mrs. Entrepreneur, are going to have trouble with X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. So in general, what I learned is the TAM, or the track, and the business, the horse. It's not that those are easy to evaluate, but the path to evaluating them, or the method, is fairly well defined. And there are lots of people who know how to do that way better than I do.
Yeah.
um,
And then
and
actually all the easy horses are done, right?
there's some lucky son of a gun out there finding an easy horse, secretariat sitting in somebody's backyard, but that's pretty rare. Um, and so what I started to realize is, okay, so you can find something that passes the TAM test or passes the track test, and you can find something within that TAM that passes the business quality or the horse test, and still screw it up.
Mm,
So something else is missing, right? And so that brought me back to this jockey, right? And I started kind of once I realized, okay, I don't know what I'm doing. Let me start calling around, and I started calling some of the best minds in ETA. I'm like, how do you evaluate these people?
mm,
And the answer was effectively portfolio theory, which means I don't. I evaluate the first two, and I figure across a portfolio of bets, enough of them will work. I'm not even going to bother trying to predict which one the jockey doesn't work for, because I can eat the ones that don't work, and they'll be offset by the ones that do, which is a problem for me on two levels. One, practically at the time when I was doing this, I didn't get as many. My portfolio was smaller. My bets, so to speak, were more concentrated, so I couldn't just like absorb a bad decision on my part. And the other one was just more philosophical, which is having to do with how I approach partnership, right? So like I talked to you a lot because I wanted to know who you were, because I was seriously considering partnering with you, which would to me would mean it becomes my responsibility to help you in every way I can to be successful, because your success ultimately is my success.
right.
So if you approach the world from that perspective, you can't really accept this more transactional way of thinking like, well, I'm going to make 10 bets and six of them, maybe five of them aren't really going to work, but that's okay. Because in my world, those are five people I've made commitments to.
Mhm.
So I can't, I can't just ignore the fact that there's information available to me that if I act on it will help them be more comfortable, more successful, and have a better experience owning in this way that you and I have circled around owning a business.
Mhm.
So that's kind of like that's sort of the why behind it, or how it started, how I started thinking about it. But the other thing I realized is, okay, so I started approaching people in a pretty conventional way, or approaching understanding people in a pretty conventional way, which is like the LinkedIn test, right? If I look at Nick, you've got a great MBA, you've got a great undergrad, you've got a master's degree, you've had all like this amazing career. with scale, you're marching up the ladder in terms of title and complexity and P&L ownership and all. So like, okay, you check every box. Great. I definitely want to buy a company with you. The problem is, um, any company that you and I look together might leave you totally psyched or completely demoralized
Right.
by
Right.
virtue of the leadership demands of that company and that context. And so the real game that I try to help people understand or play from the investor side, but also like if you're buying a company, you have to kind of approach this as an investor. Like, is this a smart way for me to allocate either my personal capital or my, the sunk cost of my time? This is my life. I'm investing in this. Is this a smart bet to make? And the thing that I start to try to help both entrepreneurs and investors focus on is like, okay, I'll give you an example. Like I'm working with a group that there's a guy who he's actually kind of similar. If I remember your predictive index, I don't have it anymore because
Yeah.
it's with my old firm, but I vaguely remember it. And like bias toward action, highly sociable, relationship driven.
Mhm.
Like I want to run hard, I want to run fast. I don't want to be slowed down. Right. So this guy I'm working with, very, very similar. And he bought a company where the total universe of buyers is in the dozens.
Mm.
The uh, sales cycle for each of those buyers from point of expression of intent is never faster than 24 months.
Mm.
So here's a guy who's wired to just go, 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 and he wants to transact, close, 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 build relationships, help understand people's problems, figure out ways to solve them, get the deal done, and move on to the next one, and like give that to his team and move on. And that will never be true, no matter what he does in this company
Mm.
or this industry. There's nothing he can do to change that. And so this is an example of and I'm working with the team broadly about this, and we're thinking like, okay, what could we have done differently? Well, if you start with understanding who you are, or you start with understanding who this guy is, and you think about like what are the things that innately drive him, what motivates him, what makes him excited, what validates him, it's the exact opposite of this deal.
Mm.
And so then you have a decision to make. Do we do this deal in spite of that? Do we try to adjust the context to make it more suitable to this guy? Or do we love this guy and decide we're just going to find another one
Mm.
because there's another one that positions him better? But the mistake I made, and I think the mistake most people make, is they stop at the kind of, to use an old, probably dated tech world term, the vanity metrics of like the LinkedIn test. Like, does your career tell me the thing I'm looking for? Does your education tell me the thing I'm looking for, or whatever? And they never really dig into what's required of leadership in this thing. And is this person going to want to be that? And if the answer is no, you got to do something different.
That's good. So there's a lot of, there's so much, I know we're talking like, "Oh, it's just not a good fit for that founder," but, like, having lived that, there's so much emotion in all of that. Like, it took
Yeah.
me 6 months even to find a company with EBITDA over 2 million. It took me
Yeah.
6 months to even get the LOI and the person to agree to sell me, and now you're telling me it's not a good fit for me? Um, but then but for the entrepreneur to step back and take that counsel and to be humble is like, you're saving them. Like these companies for entrepreneurs are part of their identity. That's part of my
Yeah.
identity, right? And so
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
when I'm failing at a company, like, you're potentially saving them a lot of heartache.
That's the hope. The hope, and look, the other thing to remember is um, sometimes I do this work with someone before they even start to look for a company. So as an investor, I wanted to do this work so that I could use this as a lens through which to help my partners evaluate companies to say, like, had we been partnered and we were looking at that deal I was just talking about, where you would be a horrible fit for it too, and you would be
Yeah.
miserable.
Yeah.
So before you get really deep into it, first contact or second, we're talking to the owner. Well, you're talking to the owner. We've devised a set of questions that allow you to start to qualify this business as a fit for you. And so just in the same way, you're looking for like 2 million of EBITDA, or you're looking for customer concentration or whatever. You're also looking for these signals. Like, is this a place where if I step in, I'm going to I'm going to perpetuate what's there and enhance it. And doing that is going to be true to who I am. And if the answer is no, and you do the work up front, then you're not going to, it's not really like I'm 6 months in, I do an LOI and then I'm evaluating. I mean, you can do it that way, but I think it's better to do the work on yourself up front and really achieve that kind of self awareness so that your self awareness is actually the screen, one of the screens against which you measure any deal you'd look at.
That's so good. That's so good. So it's not so much I'm looking for this ideal profile. I'm looking more for entrepreneur company fit. We talk about like product market fit,
Yeah.
but the
Yeah.
CEO company fit, product fit, is just as important. So once like,
Yeah.
okay, so we find the fit, we move the entrepreneur into the company, or the new CEO moves into the company, they're invested, they're set. Talk to me a little bit. I know talk to me a little bit about like surrounding that individual with support and coaching. What does that now look like for you?
Yeah. Again, if you're really on it, these are things you can define before you buy the company, and there are
Mhm.
things you can practice before you buy the company. So I'll give an example. One of my partners, he is an amazing human being. But what I like to help people remember is, you know, like if you were to ask my wife about me and she was being really candid, she'd tell you all the reasons that she loves me, and she'd tell you all the reasons that some of what she loves about me drives her crazy. Right.
Right.
So like
Right.
everything's a double-edged sword. In one room or one context, I'm amazing, and in the next one, I'm a disaster.
Yes. Right.
Uh, and
Preach.
so one of my partners is this like he's just an amazing human being, a military veteran, wildly decorated. Like when I first met this guy, I did similar kind of discovery conversations with him that I did with you. And he wouldn't tell me a damn thing about his military service. And then when I started doing reference calls on him, then I started to understand, like, I already knew he was smart and, an amazing leader of people and values based and like very clear on what he wanted to do in his life and all this stuff. But I didn't really know exactly what he'd done. And then his references, like some of the guys he was in the trenches with, in some cases, literally told me what he'd done. I'm like, oh my God, this guy is amazing. And I don't
Yeah.
know, like, I hope he buys a company with me, but even if he doesn't, I just want to, like, this guy needs to be in the world and touching more people.
Yeah.
Let me
Yeah.
help make
The
that
world
happen.
needs more of him. Yes.
Yeah. But, um, he is not like, he is a big idea. Like, you need to figure out some crazy military strategy and how to make it happen, and nobody else is going to figure it out. He's that guy. You want to do the accounting, like how do you get the logistics to get all the dudes and all the women and all the like material to the place where this needs to happen? He's not your guy.
Okay.
So he can tell you like high level how we're gonna like all the dominoes need to fall to make this happen, but he's not the guy you want doing the accounting, the operations plan, like all that stuff. And so what we decided was if we're gonna we decided the type of company we were gonna buy, where this like visionary big idea, sorting through complexity, like that's the core of the business and the core of the leader's role, and like the cultural motivational stuff. And then we're basically going to delegate to a few key hires. And in this case, we actually made one of the key hires before we even bought the company. So we're in the middle of due diligence trying to close, and we have this guy, and it was like conditional on like, we want you, you want us. When the deal closes, you are the new VP of finance. And then there was a VP of ops.
Hmm.
And we had defined these roles. We defined them in terms of like, what do these people own in the company? What are the behaviors necessary to demonstrate that, they're going to do this thing, this stuff. And we were hiring before.
Mm.
But also, while we were in the search process, we had devised search methods with and for him to help him start to get comfortable delegating to interns who we
Oh,
intentionally selected as more detail oriented, more process oriented, less touchy feely, personable, relational, more like very exacting, so that he'd practice. Because like a guy like you, if I may be so bold, and to some extent a guy like me, working with somebody who's more process oriented, more detail, like that's frustrating.
yeah.
I got to choose to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't feel good to me. I want to go, 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 and I'm like, the details will sort themselves out. It's fine. And I need like in the EOS language, if you and some of your listeners are familiar, like I need that integrator. This guy needed that
Yes.
integrator. And so we planned and we practiced around that so that when he got into the deal and we hired for it so that when he got into the deal, he had the integrator sitting right next to him.
Wow. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there was never this time where he was, I mean, look, in the best laid plans doesn't mean it was comfortable. Doesn't mean there were no hiccups, but it does mean that we weren't waiting for like the first quarterly bank reporting not to happen or to happen with inaccuracy to say, oh shoot, we need to do something about this because we could anticipate based on who he is what's going to be needed. Um, so and like you don't need. I mean, I'm good at this. I'm good at helping people do it. You can just start with. I'll go back to it. Self awareness. Who are you? What are the things that energize you? What could you do all day, whether somebody paid you or not, and just like not feel like you're even working? You just get engrossed in it and you love it. Okay, how do I design my working method so that I do more of that and less of the stuff that's the opposite? What do I hate doing? I'll avoid it at any cost, no matter even if it kills me. I will try to, like just ignore it. All these things. You're like, great. I don't want to buy a business that involves that, and I don't want to spend my day doing that.
Right.
And like that's where you start, and then you just try to select people either through hires or advisors or whatever who can kind of backfill for you on those things.
That's so good. I remember reading the EOS or the traction follow-up book, Rocket Fuel, and
That's
where
the
he
one.
talks
Yeah,
about, yeah. And after
yeah.
reading that, and reading about an implementer, I felt as a business owner, like there was a weight lifted off my shoulder. And I had that person within my company, and I immediately made her the COO. And she was happy because she was in her flow state, all
Hmm.
these nails sticking up, and she was a hammer. She was just knocking them down.
Yeah,
And I,
yeah.
I was free. Like someone told me, Nick, you should write a book called Ready, Fire, Aim, because like I'm just throwing out ideas. And I
Yeah,
finally had
yeah, yeah,
somebody, and I didn't want to do all 100 ideas, but I wanted someone to tell me which one was good and which one was bad because I wanted to chase a million things. And she's like, all 99 of those are bad, but that one's good. The team's not ready. Here's how we would roll it out when we're ready. Like,
yeah.
like I always say this to, my forum mates and in my EO group is like, a good VP changes your life. Like really changes your life. So I love it that I don't know if you had any follow-ups on that.
Yeah, just I mean, you asked a general question about like, what am I as an investor? What am I looking for?
Mm,
And is it really is it really just kind of I've got this context I'm looking for somebody, and it kind of goes either way. You can go in either direction. So as when I was with Hallstatt Legacy Partners, I was starting with you, right? And I did have a set of general attributes I was looking for because I thought, in general, this weird way of acquiring your way into leadership creates some relatively predictable stuff, right? Like
mm,
nobody, I mean, you show up, everybody's looking at you. No one's met you before, probably. If they did, maybe it was under like sketchy circumstances where the owner introduced you as like the accountant coming into the side door. I mean, like I've heard all kinds of weird stories about
yeah.
how
Yeah.
people kind of like get to look under the hood. Um, but anyway, so I was looking for people who are independent of thought, meaning like I am comfortable being different.
Mm,
And why does that matter in our or thinking differently? And why does that matter in this context, like your leadership context? Because you're going to come in and you will see the way things have been done, appreciate them. You bought the company because of them, but you'll also have a vision for what needs to happen in the future or what needs to change in order for this business to be what you want it to turn into.
mm,
And for someone who's not independent of thought, it's very easy to just backslide into the way things have always been done, which means you never get where you're trying to go. So
hmm,
I want somebody who's comfortable knowing I see this differently than everyone around me. And I respect their opinion. I respect the legacy, but I kind of know where we got to go. And we're going to get there. Um, I want a bias toward action, because there are so many aspects of leadership. It's like parenting, right? Like, my son or my daughter, does something and I have the choice to make. Am I the friend and am I just going to let this slide and not say anything? Or am I the parent and I'm like, nope, we're getting into this and it's going to suck and she's not going to like me or he's not going to like me. But like, this is what needs to happen and damn it, it's happening. Like in
Yeah,
leadership,
yeah.
there's so many of these decisions where you're like relating to that. Like I know independently what's going to happen and I know what needs to happen to get us there. And I will just like, we're going to go, we're going to do it. Um, the other one is like I don't really care so much if somebody's like truly introverted or extroverted. What I care is, do you have a capacity to relate with, empathize with, and communicate with other people?
Yeah.
Can you? Because that tells me like when you get into a room, will you be comfortable selling and advocating for yourself? Will you be comfortable shutting up and listening and asking open-ended questions and like being educated by the people around you who have such great context and knowledge, and in your case, like tribal, they've been there for way longer than you. Um, and can you, through communication and persuasion, help somebody create a shared understanding of this future state you envision? So you're not always independent, but you have the capacity to bring somebody into your vision, into your mission, like create this shared outcome.
Mm,
And then the last thing is it's kind of like relates to innovation, but I want enough formality so that there are some parts of the way the world works that are inviolable, but for everything else, you're comfortable figuring it out. Because so
mm,
much of what you're doing in your company, I'm guessing, is you're deciding what has been done stays and what needs to change. And you can't be like slavish to what used to be. You also can't just throw everything out and just start all over.
yeah.
And so you have to be comfortable in this like liminal space between um, the world is black and white and there is no, like it's all innovation. And you have to kind of be able to discern which is which. And if you're in that innovative state, then it goes back to the communication. Like you need to help everyone else understand. I know we've done this for 20 years this way. Here's why I'd like us to try this new thing. And acknowledging it's scary, acknowledging it's uncomfortable, partnering on the pain path to get there, etc. So anyway, so, you can flip it, and sometimes what I do, I don't do this for myself so much, but I do it with other private equity groups. They have a deal, and I help them analyze the deal and say, okay, well, while some version of that cocktail is probably always warranted in this particular context, you want more of this, you want less of that, you want some of this expertise, you think you want this, but you don't really need it, that kind of thing. So you can go either way. But as an individual operator, I would start with myself.
As an individual yeah, yeah. So as, I think about it just evaluating myself, like, I wanna hit the 3 points, but independence of thought, empathy, and I guess you would call it innovative state was the 3rd one, which, I don't know if you've ever written I haven't seen any I've read your Substack, but I haven't seen a direct article on that. I just know for myself speaking, like, I came in with a lot of independent thinking, and it upset the team a lot because I wasn't doing the empathy piece. It was probably needed maybe 6 months into the acquisition once, like, we understood, like, I earned a little bit more trust and showed more empathy and earned that from them. And I've noticed even in this life cycle now with AI in my business in particular, there has to be innovation of thought. We will get demolished if we keep staying in this, and I have to get people. And so you wrote this wonderful piece where I think you were talking about a real world example you had with an entrepreneur who came out of iBanking, and he was talking way over everybody's head. So some of these things that you're talking about just with empathy is how you communicate. Do you have advice for how CEOs can communicate persuasively, adequately with empathy with their teams?
Yeah, well, I guess the first thing is a question or a suggestion about perspective. So very often, I find that people they can approach communication as like a bit of a narcissistic exercise rather than a
Right.
marketing exercise. And what I mean by that is they try to devise their method as though they're speaking to themselves. So if I were trying to convince myself of this thing, this is the argument I would make. But, like, I'll give an example. There's a CEO I'm working with right now, and he is another one of these, like, it's not always a visionary, but I find a lot of people in this world end up being more of the visionary, less of the integrator in these roles. And he's leading a company where he's surrounded by, um, they're not all this, but I'll just describe them as accountants, right? So super detail oriented, very process driven, almost afraid of making errors,
Mm,
uh, like, um, not generally attracted to the new, the novel,
yeah,
very rules based.
yeah,
And he's like the exact opposite of that. Big ideas, like we're going to the moon,
yeah. Oh, yeah,
and
risk is
so
relative. Yeah, right.
yeah, and so what I've been working with him on is his own communication method and some like organizational design stuff. And his reflexive response to me, and I guess is indicative of my own failure in communicating with him until I was like, "Man, doctor, take your own medicine." um, he just kept pushing back on these methods I was suggesting, and he just would say, he kept saying like, "Man, I would never want that. Feels like micromanagement to me, or I would never want to be treated that way." And then it was like a record scratch moment. I'm like, "This isn't about you; it's about them." And so, like, I want you to pretend you're this accountant who is risk averse, averse to change, super rules based. So if you don't define it as a rule, it doesn't exist. Uh, like, allergic to the idea that he or she could ever be wrong. And if you start from that perspective, what does all this sound like to you?
Mm,
And it's like, it sounds like gobbledygook. It doesn't sound like anything I'd want to do. It sounds like speculative. I don't even know if you mean this. So, like, how do you communicate with this person in such a way as to align with how they see the world, how they interpret, how they receive information, that sort of thing. So that's where you start. It's getting out of your own head and thinking, okay, who is this person I'm trying to communicate with, or who is this team that I'm now a part of and technically in charge of,
yeah, yeah,
and how do I and I say technically because there's also this like weird fallacy that everybody has when they buy a company. Like, I'm the owner, I'm
yeah,
the CEO. Now everybody just needs to listen to me. And they're like, that isn't even true if you've been there 20 years. It's definitely not true if you've been there 20 minutes. so
yeah, yeah,
so it's like, okay, in most things, my my advice is you start by stop making it about you and start making it about something else, whether that's your someone else, like whether that's your customer or whether that's your employee or whatever. And then you approach this as a strategic communication exercise, like, how do I need to communicate to them so they understand what it is that I'm trying to communicate? And that's where it starts. But if you can learn that discipline, you can do that, and of course, I went to Kellogg, so everybody thinks I know marketing, but that's like classic marketing, right? Like, who's my customer?
yeah,
What
yeah,
segment am I serving? What value do they care about? How do I demonstrate that, this thing that I have gives them that value, right?
yeah.
It's the same thing.
Was Philip Kotler still there when you were in B school? Yeah.
He was, I never took a class with him because they kind of reserved his time for um, the exec eds who were paying like 25
Uh,
grand for a weekend. so so he was around, but he wasn't messing with me.
he was talking to board members. Yeah, yeah, that's
Mhm.
funny. No, you brought up a lot of stuff I want to go back to, but I think it's a good segue because, like, I'm always surprised when I talk to a fellow CEO is how much imposter syndrome is going on with all of us. You in your executive coaching, because I know you do this for private equity, you do it for, CEOs that need this. I would love to know just what is the most common complaints that you get from leaders about, yeah, imposter syndrome being one of them, but like it's lonely and there's not always peers to bounce things off of, and you can't tell your team anything. You can't even tell your spouse or your partner everything. What is that you most commonly find that you're working through with leaders on?
Yeah, I mean, the imposter syndrome is a real thing, and arguably it is for everyone, but whether they're the CEO or not, anybody who's trying to do something hard, it's a thing. But specific to the acquired CEO, the venture-backed CEO, the PE-backed CEO. Um, the thing I hear most that you just said is, "I'm alone."
Mm,
So, and I hear this even from people who were a member of the team and then they're elevated, to CEO. So an old mentor of mine used to say, "You went from being an us to a them." So like you're different now.
yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and so the common refrain is like, I've got this board, and they think they know what's going on at the business, but I also know that like they evaluate me, so I'm not really sure how candid I can be with them. And is this like a safe space to really communicate? Maybe some board members it is, others it's not. I've got this team. I'm not really sure as a CEO what I'm supposed to, how much vulnerability I can really show here. Or am I supposed to be more stoic and like let this, I bear this burden alone? Um, my spouse, our personal finances are totally wrapped up in this. And, if you do a self funded deal, there's a big SBA guarantee hanging over our heads
Yeah.
collectively. And like, how much can I really dump on him or her without, freaking them out because they don't, maybe they get the dumping, but they don't see the upside um, or my friends. Like I've got, one of my family members is extremely successful in his chosen path, and all his friends he made 25 years ago, and they're teachers and like public servants. They're these amazing people, but the context, professional context, is totally different, right? So like they want to be there for him, but they don't understand a lot of the kind of nuance of like what he does every day. Um, so that's the number one complaint. Like when I people I think like me, like working with me because um, I can help them figure something out that they can do about these things. But mostly it's because they feel safe talking to me because I don't. I'm well, I would guess if you talk to people whose boards I'm on, they still feel safe and they think I'm a weird board member. um, there's a lot of weird in my life, um, but particularly the folks where I'm not on the board and I'm just trying to like help them and create value and add value for them on the margins. It's because we work to create a set of circumstances where they understand my only function in life is to help them achieve more self-awareness, figure out some insights about how they show up or want to get more connected to the people around them, and like imbue a sense of purpose that's about something other than just 5 times MOIC, right?
Yeah.
And so, but I would say like when I going back to this, like how can you create this for yourself without somebody like me? You can create this
Yeah.
for yourself.
Yeah.
So you mentioned EO, right? EO forums, Vistage,
YPO. Yeah.
um,
They're great.
YPO, great. If you have, if you're in the search world, there are mastermind groups, there are informal things where people just get together and agree to talk. Um, there's all kinds of ways. Like if you're really thoughtful and you think about like in my darkest moments, what happened before that and what helped me get out of it, you can create that. It's like a life version of if then. If this happens, then I'm going to do this immediately. Like this is the person I'm going to call. I'm
Yes.
going to go for a run first, sort it out, or whatever it is. That's the idea. Um, but the other thing I would say is a lot of trust and a lot of connection within the company comes from questioning and adjusting this idea of the
Mm,
isolation of the CEO.
mm.
So I think a lot of people, when they become CEO, impose upon themselves this story that they have to be the smartest person in the room. They have to know all the answers. They have to come up with all the solutions. And it's just not reasonable. It's not realistic. And so, like, some of this imposter syndrome comes from this weird, self-created narrative that like I have to be the best, the smartest, the brightest. And when you do that, the funny thing is like you foreclose on the opportunity to benefit from all the people around you, and you prevent them from connecting with you and letting them like care for you.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying like go out and weep on the, in the conference room in front of
Yeah.
everybody on the shop floor, but
No, no,
but I'm
don't do
saying
that.
like, yeah, but there's some for most people in leadership, there's probably some opportunities where I could go like the thing that no one's saying, everybody knows.
Yeah.
Like AI is disrupting. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but everybody in this industry knows something's happening. I can either pretend that nobody knows that and only I do, which is insane because everybody knows it. Or I can invite a conversation with everybody where we collaborate to say, like, look, we're going to figure this out together. I don't have all the answers. You guys are, amazing. Let's partner. And I'm going to like, let's not bullshit each other. Pardon my
Yeah.
language, but this is scary. But we'll through it together. If we double down on our first principles, our values, our mission, our commitment to each other, our commitment to our customers, we'll figure this out. And when you do that and you like relieve yourself of the burden of being the world's smartest person, some of the stuff that's like the foundation of the imposter syndrome, like I'm not good enough, you kind of let go of.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. I've noticed, I'm not saying I do that perfectly at all, but being vulnerable about what is blocking your business and like, yeah, it causes me anxiety. AI causes me anxiety. Pivoting to an upstream customer base where we have less leads, causes me anxiety.
Yeah.
And maybe not
Yeah.
frame them as anxieties at your, senior leadership team meeting, but like, hey, these are the things I think are going to be headwinds to our business over the next quarter, 3 years, or like whatever, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year planning, and inviting them into that conversation, gives me, again, is one of those things that relieves a lot of tension. And maybe if I'm being vulnerable, I get a little bit more vulnerability out of my team. And I think some of that trust, I think that's kind of what you're alluding to. I just think it
Yeah.
relates to a better plan for the company when everyone starts trusting, like,
I think so. It gives them ownership too, right? It's
sure.
like, I want you to be a part of this. People respond to efficacy. They respond to opportunity. They respond to trust. Like people, generally speaking, unless they're like sociopathological, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
they reciprocate to vulnerability. So like you inviting them in, actually, interestingly enough, like pulls them in.
Mm,
It's like I'm like walking toward the camera. How dramatic
yeah,
is that?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You like you showing that you value them and you inviting them into like this shared problem solving exercise, ironically, like pulls them closer to you. In most cases, like look, we've all had stories of somebody who you tried to open up to and it didn't work out. But in my life, uh, most often, uh, it's the case that when I do that, or when someone I'm working with chooses to do that, good comes from it.
No, that's really good. I just noticed from an senior leadership team composition, when I started doing that, you immediately see who's down for the fight, who cares a lot, who's pulling with you, and those who don't. And, unfortunately, you don't always have when you're picking a CEO, just especially this is why maybe we didn't work together. We started working. I'm like, well, how long until we make an investment, Shannon? You're like, well, I like to get to know somebody for a year. I'm like, 1 year? I gotta make an acquisition in like 6 months.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
I can't
yeah,
wait around. So
yeah,
again, comes back to my PI. But like the same thing, we do that. We have to take a portfolio approach to sometimes building out our team. I don't have 1 year to make a VP hire. I can go as slow as I can. I can do the most diligence, but like I might get tricked. I might get tricked.
yeah,
And so once we actually start having these conversations, I just noticed if that's part of your culture, transparency, trust, being vulnerable, being real about the issues facing the company, that is huge. And then the other thing that I was just thinking about on that issue, I've had a couple boards in my life, and I remember doing our board presentation at one of our technology startups, and the board member was not paying attention, like at all. And I was like, well, look at the numbers, the hockey sticks going up and to the right, this chart, like look at our retention things. And he stopped me. He goes, Nick, is this really what you want to talk about? I was like, this guy was had multiple successful exits. And I was like, no, I don't. I actually have these three things that are terrifying me. And like, that would be much better use of your time now that I'm thinking about it. It made me feel very stupid in the moment. But that was the best board member I ever had because he wanted to come in. He didn't want the charts. He didn't want the good news. He didn't want the fluff. He's like, let me partner with you and let's talk about what bothers you about the business. I've had, and like, then I carry that into my next company. He's like, why this company's a disaster. I can't wait to fire you, Nick. I'm just like, it was like, it's
Yeah,
amazing how much like you could have somebody that's just not does not want bad news. They just like, you better be performing, CEO. But somebody who's real about like, hey, I get it. This entrepreneurship thing is hard. What are you worried
yeah,
about? Let's work on it.
yeah. I mean, there's a practical reality to be struck. Um, my broader philosophy, which some people uh, whose capital I've invested know more of, and some people know less of, is that it is irresponsible for a capital sponsor not to take ownership of the operating conditions of the CEO. And the reason is because the CEO works for the board, and the board is largely controlled by the capital sponsor or sponsors. And if the capital sponsor or sponsors are not careful, their method of managing the CEO will influence the downstream cultural and operating imperative of
Yes.
the company.
Yes.
So if you constantly harangue the CEO only about the numbers, the CEO, whether she intends to or not, will over time ultimately manage everything in relationship only to those numbers.
Mhm.
And the reality, like most people will generally argue, not all, but many will argue that the way you're going to get the best results is by attracting the best people, giving them what they need, and letting them do amazing things. But the reality is, most board members' uh, yeah, contribution has nothing to do with that. And so there. Look, there. I'm not saying you got to throw out the financial reporting and the KPIs and all that, but I am saying my personal predilections align with that guy's more than the average board member I've been in boardrooms with,
Yes.
because it's much easier for me to like just look at the financials and say, okay, well, Nick's doing a great job or Nick's not. But what's harder, and I feel less certain about, is can I help Nick figure out this really hard thing? It's easier for me to say, well, it's Nick's job to figure out this really hard thing. But if you think about it, that's insane because, like, I only do well if you do well.
Yeah.
So why would I just leave to chance that you figure this out? Why wouldn't I dedicate my time and attention to helping you figure it out?
Right.
In the same way that you're talking about doing the same thing with the people who work with you, right? Like I'm going to try to help you be, whatever. So anyway, unfortunately, though, most board members, and it's like you felt stupid. You shouldn't. I mean, my therapist tells me I shouldn't tell you what you should or shouldn't feel, but
Phew,
like it's
stop
unfair
shooting.
to
I
yourself.
always stop shooting on people.
Yeah, yeah. It's not fair for you to say you should have known that because the average board member manages the management team according to the financials or KPIs.
Yeah.
So my view is like you're just reporting what the people who own the company, collectively probably more than you do, want to hear, whether or not it's the most useful thing for you. But the other thing, like to turn that on its ear a little bit, one of the pieces of feedback I try to give CEOs is you're the CEO of the deal, not the company. So CEOs have a tendency to get into this weird subordinated position where they're like, well, you know, firm X, Y, and Z owns this company, so I kind of have to do what they say. And like, well, the reality is you know more about this company than
Yeah.
anybody at the table.
Yeah.
So really the better play is for you to help everybody understand what needs to happen because that's the vision component of the CEO's role and you to get everybody moving in that direction, board, management team, employees, etc. And it's not for you to like respond, it's for you to demand from all the stakeholders what's necessary for success in this
Mm,
context.
that's good.
And like some of the worst things I've done were a direct result of me deferring in the way that I'm just describing. So, like, this sponsor knows more. They don't. This
Yeah.
sponsor controls. Well, technically they do, but they don't have enough knowledge to really exert control correctly. So I need to influence them so they endorse what I know needs to happen. Like, anyway, you get the idea.
I think that's great. Hey, we're about up on our time, but I did want to get a little bit more into what Brones and Co. does, and what you're up to lately, and some of the work that you're doing.
Yeah, happy to. I work with investors and I work with investor, call it backed entrepreneurs. So CEOs of primarily private equity owned, sometimes venture owned companies. And in a nutshell, some of what I do is just translation. So, you know, back and forth, investor, what is it that you are really trying to say to this entrepreneur, and what are what impact do you want that to have? And entrepreneur, what do you really need from this investor, and how do you get it?
Mm,
Um, uh, but beyond that, what I try to help all parties do is get aligned around the connection between the value creation thesis that underpins this whole thing and the human strategy that's going to achieve it.
yes.
Because I find that even though everybody may agree on the thesis and what needs to happen at the company, particularly on the investor side of the table, there's often very little appreciation about what actually needs to be present at the company to make that happen. There's just this kind of presumption that what's needed must already be there, or
Mm,
that the CEO knows and they'll just figure it out and make it happen. And the reality is, there's an amazing opportunity if you start with the CEO and build the team around to improve the outcome and to improve the probability of you getting to and beyond this value creation thesis.
mm,
If you all take an objective look at who's there and who's not, what capabilities exist and what don't, and what needs to exist given who's already there, and build it, and then align it and enable it. So sometimes I do that with the CEO who's realizing like, okay, I'm more visionary. There's an ops hole here. I'm
yeah.
definitely not the one to fill it. How do
Yeah.
I do that? Sometimes it's with the board who's saying, Shannon's running this company, and I really like the industry. I really like the company. It's something's just not working right, and I'm not really sure what it is. Can you go talk to Shannon and figure out what's going on? And we usually can, and it's usually um, you know Shannon's focusing on something that is not his wheelhouse and really shouldn't be, because there's somebody missing who
Yes.
should be doing that, right? That kind of thing. So, um, and sometimes this is more for fun than anything else. I work with, I do something I call the Leadership Lab, but it's basically folks who are really small businesses or like emerging searchers, and they're just trying to figure out what should I be looking for? Who am I? How am I going to be most successful and happiest? How is this not going to destroy my my life, my family, my health?
Yeah.
And how do I get kind of moving in the right direction? So that's what I do. And then in my spare time, when I'm not a dad to three amazing kids and a husband to an amazing wife who's taller than me, and play basketball at Duke, and
Wow.
who can who can kick my butt in pretty much every way. I also teach ETA at the University of Colorado
I
in the
saw
MBA
that.
program.
Congratulations. That's a cool gig,
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
That's really great. How
it's a
can
lot of
people
fun.
find you? Any email, whatever, LinkedIn? What is that?
Yeah, so LinkedIn. I'm like I'm a inconsistent but somewhat frequent publisher there. So you can tell if I'm like deeply embroiled in something, because I go dark for like 2 weeks, and then all of a sudden there's like a week straight of stuff. So LinkedIn, I'm just W Shannon Jones, or if you just look up Shannon Jones, you'll find me. Um, my blog that you referenced is Transcendencio, which is just transcendence with CEO at the end, which is a Substack, which is free. And then uh, my website is Brones, Brones, LLC.com. So you can see more of what I do there. But
That's perfect.
those are the best ways to find me.
We'll put those all in the show notes too, so they'll be linked
Thank you.
right below the podcast. I really appreciate it. Where did the name Brones come from? I haven't never asked you about.
Yeah. So my last name is Jones, and my wife's last name is Brodnick.
Okay,
And so we've had a couple like consulting shingles over the years. We met in business school. People assume that means we're like peers, but she's, as I indicated, you'd rather talk to her. She's the better half of the half, for sure. Um, but anyway, everyone calls us the Brones because
uh,
she's Brodnick and I'm Jones. So I just took the name, and that's so she does some entrepreneurial things and under Brones, and then it's mostly my consulting stuff.
perfect. Well, of course, you did go to Kellogg, so that's where you learned how to put those those two names together.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yep, that's right.
Shannon, always a pleasure. Thanks so much. I've always found you enlightening. I definitely recommend people read your Substack. I think as an entrepreneur in this space, there's just a lot of soul searching, and there's so many things that we can get better as human beings in this journey of business ownership. I just think it's such an opportunity. So anyway, I appreciate you contributing so much to the community, man.
Well, thanks for your really kind words, and I'm flattered to be invited to do this with you, and I'm just happy that something I said made some sense to you,
That's good.
because I know I have a tendency to ramble. So my apologies to everybody watching or listening for that. And
Just
yeah,
listen
look
on two
forward to
speed. You'll be fine.
yeah, exactly, and hopefully talk again sooner than another 4 years from now.
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again.